And welcome to Talks of OutKasts, where we dive into the deep waters of faith, the Bible, life as a Christian, and the journey of ministry. We are two preachers of the gospel. Miles is somewhere, I'm somewhere, and there's a lot of background noise tonight, Miles. Something going down there at Miles Manor?
Yep, new house. That's the saw. If you're wondering, is the saw going at 10 o'clock at night? The answer is yes.
Wow.
And so, I guess our viewers won't know what time it is, but yes, the saw is definitely going in the middle of the night. Well, tonight is a fun time of technology. We'll see if Gavin jumps back on here because he's reconnecting.
Hear me. Right.
What are we doing, bro?
Come on, Gavin.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you fine. Let's just plow forward, Miles. We got time for.
All right, well.
So, Miles, why don't you introduce us? Who's Gavin?
So this is Gavin. He's one of my original youth.
Yeah, dude.
In fact, one of the original creators of the podcast. And so he is a former student, living his life. I don't know where he's at these days. He's not on the podcast right now. He's gone completely. Now,
so why don't you tell us the story of the original Talks of OutKasts? Because you say it's one of the originator. He's one of the original guys, but he's not really one of the original guys of this podcast. Let's just be honest. We just stole another podcast's name.
That's fair.
And logo and, you know.
Yeah. So most people don't know this. Well, some people do that listen to our podcast, but I actually started this podcast with three other youth, like 3 kids from the youth group and myself. They just wanted to ask questions, go through some things, and that's how it started. This was at the height of COVID, so everybody was podcasting. So it was like the thing to do. And so that's one of the things that we started. And then, kids, they were like 16 and 17 and, can't be trusted.
And the way that I entered the picture was that you left that church and you came out to where I was to be the collegiate minister at the college in our town. Yep. And you and I struck up a friendship. Me, of course, as the mentor. Yep. And we started noticing that whenever we hung out, we would have these conversations, and people would always be just sitting around listening to us talk, not really participating, but just listening to us talk. Yeah. And so we thought, well, hey, maybe we could do a podcast. The other thing, remember, and this is something you and I don't talk about a whole lot, is that a lot of times when you and I talked, it would kind of turn into, what's a good word for it? Well, let's just say just 2 preachers in high pressure situations that would just kind of, hey, good to see you again, Gavin. We're just kind of telling the story of the podcast and how I entered the picture.
Nice.
But a lot of our conversations ended up really goofy and a lot of laughter, and we started thinking though, well, maybe people don't think we can ever be serious and have serious conversations. We knew we could, but we never really seemed to when people were around, and so we decided to start the podcast. We played with a lot of different names. My favorite one was 2 guys talk about stuff, but Miles shot that down. He didn't like that. And so we decided to steal Gavin, y'all's idea of the title, Talks of OutKasts, and the logo and the whole deal. And so here we are. It's kind of Talks of OutKasts 2.0.
I believe the question or how it went was you just said, yeah, let's just steal theirs. I think that's how that was. Yeah, no need to
No, I think it was more like you said, hey, I used to do a podcast back in the day. We'll just take all that and just, that's the way I remember it.
That's fine. Yeah. There's still, what my favorite part about this is there's an Instagram and a Google that I can't get into because these little children set these things up and no one remembers those things.
I think it might still be on my email.
Yeah, see, he doesn't know. I've asked before. I've asked before.
That's
and he's
great.
Like, nah, bro.
That's great.
So,
well, Gavin, where are you at these days? What are you doing now?
I'm living in Roland, Oklahoma. Back and forth in Jay, Oklahoma as well. Yeah.
Is Roland in kind of the same area?
No, it's further south, like 2 hours south. It's
Okay.
by Fort Smith, if you've ever heard of that.
Okay, but still on the eastern side of the state.
Yes, as far east
Yeah.
as you can get.
Okay. Very nice. And are you going to school or?
I'm not in school. I'm currently just working. I'm an
Okay.
Amazon delivery driver.
That's
Nice.
right. I'm living that
Yeah,
life,
Okay.
bro.
Santa
He
Yeah,
Claus right now.
he's also a world traveler. Chris, ask him where he's going in a few weeks.
Hey, Gavin, I was just wondering where you going in a few weeks.
I'm going to Colombia.
Colombia. So
Yeah.
where, like Medellin or Bogota or?
Ibagué, 2 hours west of Bogota.
Oh yes, Igabe.
Oh yeah, you know where that's at, right, Chris?
One
You've
of
been
my,
there.
and what are you going there just for rest and relaxation? You doing a mission trip? What are you doing down there?
No, my girlfriend's from there.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Good for
It
you.
is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, good for you. Well, that'll be fun.
It will
So
be.
I guess her family's from there and all that business. Or you?
Yep.
I guess you just said that.
She is.
He's like, nah, bro. I just go. We just go. We just meet
I
in
just
Colombia
go.
twice a
I
year.
just go.
Yeah, yeah. We
So
don't
you
really
go
know.
twice a year?
Col- no. Oh,
Oh,
this will be my second time going.
it's riveting
It's really,
podcasting here.
it's beautiful. It'll be my second time.
Okay, cool. Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
Well, Gavin, what do you want to talk about?
I don't know. I kind of put some questions together for you guys and see how some personal questions and then also a couple of like just general Christian knowledge questions.
Yeah, awesome.
You
Let
ready
it
for the
rip,
first
Tater
one?
Chip. You
Yeah,
bet.
we're ready, dude.
Let me get to my notes. Hold on.
Okay.
Ah. Hey, while you're in your notes, turn your phone to landscape so that you'll match us.
Turn it sideways.
Yes, bro.
All right, hold on.
Didn't we try that with somebody else in the last couple of weeks
Yeah,
and it
I
made it
think
worse?
so.
And yeah.
Yeah, we're fixing to find out. I mean, he's
Hey,
going through
did
his notes.
did we upload last week's? Was that ever able to upload?
Yeah, I put in a disclaimer that the first few minutes Jasmine's not in it,
Okay.
but then she comes into it. So I put a disclaimer. First 15
Okay.
minutes she's not there, but we answer her question. I edited it just enough to where it just started. So
Okay.
yeah. So Chris, how was
Hey,
Sunday? While we wait for the notes.
I'm ready whenever
Sunday
you
was
are.
good. My son Todd, of course, those that have been on this Talks of Outcast journey with us will remember that Todd was one of our last guests in season 1. He was,
That's
of
right.
course, the master of the one-word answer until the very end.
Yep.
And so he came down for the holiday and for the break, and he preached his first sermon.
That's good. Did he
Yeah.
go the full 45?
No,
Ah,
at 25.
that's good.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, not
That's
bad.
good. All right,
Yeah.
Gavin, take it away, bro.
All right,
You ready?
Gavin.
All right,
Yep.
I'm going to read it and then I'll return to the camera. First question. Why don't we see miracles today at the same magnitude of miracles we've seen in the Bible?
I'll let you go, Chris.
Well, so in the Bible, there are certain periods of time where you see more miracles than usual. You see a great deal of them in the time of Moses, and then you see another sort of rush of miracles in the ministries of Elijah and Elisha, and then of course you see them in the life of Jesus in the Gospels, and then you see them in the Book of Acts with the apostles. Other than that, like First Samuel, there are very few miracles. Second Samuel, there's almost no miracles. In the book of Ruth, not only are there no miracles, there are no visions. There's no, there's, and by the time you come to like Esther and Nehemiah and Ezra, God is all, I'm going to be careful. I'm going to try to be careful how I say this. God's almost a secondary actor. He's not, because he's still the unseen hand behind the scenes that's kind of guiding and directing things. But like in the book of Esther, God's not even mentioned. In fact, not only are there no miracles, there's no mention, like I said, there's no mention of God, there are no prayers, um, there's no worship, there's no festival. I mean, so you really kind of see the miracles in the Bible at strategic points, and where you see them is when God is doing something new. So, bringing the Israelites out of Egypt, proving to Pharaoh that he is God and he is God over all of the Egyptian gods. The time of Elijah and Elisha, and then of course, with Jesus, the miracles that Jesus performs are purposeful, namely the fact that people were to look at this guy who's walking on water and stopping storms with words and casting out demons and healing people who had been lame their entire life and raising the dead, like in the case of Lazarus. People were supposed to look at this guy and say there's something different about him because normal people don't do this, right? I mean, normal men don't just get out of a boat and start walking on water, and normal men can't just speak to a hurricane and it just stops. And so there's something that's different about this, guys. And so of course in the life of Jesus, all of the miracles work to point to the fact that he is who he said he was, which of course he's the Messiah and he's God in the flesh. When you come to the book of Acts, the reason that there are miracles in the book of Acts is because, again, God is doing something new. We're passing from the old covenant and we're passing now into the new covenant. And so there's an uptick in miracles in the book of Acts because God is validating the message that the apostles were preaching. And so, I mean, why don't we see miracles today? I mean, of course, maybe we see miracles today, but we just don't call them miracles. Maybe somebody being cured of cancer through things like chemotherapy or radiation treatment, or I mean, maybe that's a miracle, but we're so used to assigning everything scientific terms and looking for rational reasons for why these things happen. We don't use miracle language anymore, when in fact this is what they are.
It's good.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I mean, we talked about this. I can't remember when it was. We just talked about how like newborns, like premature babies, can now live like aggressive. Yeah, aggressively preborn. Dude, the saw in the background. This is so crazy.
Hey, when you think
Um,
about it, though, the electric saw is a miracle.
yes, and air
That's right.
conditioning, and
That's right.
things like that.
Indeed.
Indeed. So on that note about miracles, I'm going to hijack that question. Do you think, because I was thinking about this, you just said that, God uses miracles to, or he ushered in like Moses, the time of Moses, and then through the prophets, and then Jesus, and then in Acts. The next time we talk about miracles in that sense will be the Antichrist, right? In end times, he will deceive, right? It says in Second Thessalonians, mentions the lawless one with all sorts of counterfeit miracles, signs and wonders, deceptive imposter. Revelation 13 talks about the same thing. You think that's kind of why? Like God kind of gives us the preface of that time that's coming. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I mean, I know I'm shooting out here kind of off the hip at it.
Yeah, I mean, if you hold a certain views of the return of Christ, certainly, hey, the end is approaching. Would
Mhm.
certainly be, God would you could certainly see that would fit the pattern that
Sure.
this is all wrapping up now, and
Yeah.
so, um, yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of where you see kind of that final surge of miracles is in Revelation and in, like you said, First Thessalonians, and of course, depending on your perspective on the return of Christ, that's going to impact the way that you see it and understand those things too. But
Sure.
yeah, definitely
Sure.
for sure.
Yeah. That's good. But I think
It's
I think
good.
you're right. Um, yeah, I think you're right. Just how we just discount things that are so normal for us now. I mean, just penicillin, antibiotics, just the many different things that we have today. Even farming, right? I've learned a lot about farming, about how the new tools they can use the same crop and not have to have the dust bowl because of technology now. So very interesting things.
Yeah, and think about this, like with what my wife does for a living. My wife is an ultrasound tech. I mean, think
Yeah,
about the technology of being able to look inside someone's body without cutting them open and seeing what's there.
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
for
it's
sure.
crazy.
Yeah, that's good. Good
It's
question.
good. Next question.
Yeah, bro. Next one.
Let her
All
rip.
right. Let me go to the notes.
The
Are
notes
you
is
having to
awesome.
turn off your phone because your notes are on your phone?
Yeah, my notes are on my phone.
I feel you. I feel you.
Hey,
All right.
man. He's got it, but at
Question.
least he has questions, right?
That's right.
All right. Next question. If this makes sense at all, how do we determine the filling between emotions and the Holy Spirit? Like, for example, when we're worshiping.
Huh. Huh.
Well, that's a good one.
Huh. Yeah, that is a really good one. I was involved in an online Bible study last week with a bunch of cowboys from different perspectives, and these are all rodeo guys. And so there was a lot of talk about, hey, we just got to be led by the Spirit, and hey, and I was just like, well, similar question what you're asking, Gavin. Well, how do we know we're being? I mean, we keep saying this, hey, we just got to be led by the Spirit. It's got to be Spirit led. Well, how do we know if it's Spirit led, right?
Yeah.
And how do we know? And I think, Gavin, I think that is a great question because one, we assume that we'll know
Mm,
when what we might be feeling might not be the Holy Spirit. Maybe it might be something we ate the night before, right? I mean, and I'm saying that a little facetiously,
sure, sure,
but
sure.
but there's a statement that Paul makes in one of his letters where he says that the devil appears as an angel of light.
Mm,
Okay. So if the devil appears as an angel of light, and just assuming that Paul meant exactly what he meant, like Paul wrote exactly what he meant, what would be the point of that? Well, the point of that seems to me is that the devil can disguise himself so that we're not really sure if we're dealing with an angel or we're not really sure or whether or not we're dealing with a devil, right? And so if that's the case with the devil, then wouldn't that also probably stand to reason that that would also be the case of our flesh? I don't know of anybody who's ever caused a serious problem in any church who didn't do what they did because they really thought what they were doing was right. And my point just being that it's so easy it's so easy for us to misinterpret, misunderstand, misdiagnose, to assume that, well, this must be the spirit when maybe it's not the spirit. Maybe it's just a really well written piece of music that you get caught up in the medley, right? I mean, you can go to any secular concert and have similar feelings if the artist is good at evoking that sort of thing. So, in my mind, the only way we know for sure is whether or not what we're singing is true, is whether or not, what we're singing is accurate and whether or not we're singing is biblical.
yeah, I think the same thing also goes for preaching, right? I mean,
Nah, bro.
uh, listen, I knew you were gonna say that, because the humblest preacher I know. So,
Yes,
but
that's right. I got a prize.
but that is the same reality too, right? I mean, if the preaching is what we want to hear, I mean, we're gonna like it, and not all the time, right? There, it just depends. It needs to be scriptural based, sound, and all those things. That's the praying. That's everything we do from the beginning to the end of the worship session, right? Is all of it needs to glorify. The scripture is going to be bringing it to what's known, and so it all is glorifying God because it is anchored in truth, and those things. It's like this. So this is probably a little weird. Now I don't know if it's weird. Chris would call it something, but he's on a podcast and he can't say what he wants to out loud. But
Well, whatever
when
do
I
you mean?
when I listen to the national anthem, um, I can't
Get you
help
going.
but yeah, it gets me going. I can't help but tear up, and it's not because I have this overly sense of love for America, but I always remember my little brother when he was in Iraq and calling me that time. Like like I didn't know what it's like to feel the desperate need for something to happen because I never had anybody in the service close to me. And so now that has happened, I can't help but go back there every time, right? And so I think we can do the same thing with church. I think we can do the same thing with worship music in Oklahoma. I'm going to say it because I'm getting to a place where I can say it out loud. We think that if we go back to Falls Creek, we're going to have that same feeling of Jesus like we did when we were 12. And that's the only place we can meet with God because it's so good and so wonderful because that's the place where God found me or I found him or whatever. It's like, well, that's not at all accurate. That's not at all biblical. That's not all. The Spirit goes with you. If it's true that you had a true meeting with God and he met you at that place, then he's going to meet you this Sunday. He's going to meet you today. but he's going to meet you everywhere, because the God that holds us and keeps us is the same God that sees us through the end, and sees us through all things. Why else would he tell us in Philippians, he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion in the day of Christ Jesus? If that's true, if Paul wrote, once again, if Paul wrote what he meant to write, then it would be an all the time thing, not just a certain place we go. And that could be any church camp, right? I don't know what Texas. I mean, I know Texas goes to Falls Creek as well, but it could be any. Could be a local camp. It could just be where you met Christ. Like, I could long to go back to First Baptist Commerce, because that's the first time I knew about Christ, and but that feeling is something, and that spirit driven should be with me all the time and everywhere. Not that I can't sometimes affect how I feel, right? Because I'm sinning and running from God. Of course, that plays a part, but I think a lot of this feeling, and I feel like today we've turned church into something. Well, if I don't feel nothing, um, then the Spirit's not there. Well, maybe you're just not right. I don't know. I've heard that a lot lately, and I hear it a lot in the college age students, that the Spirit's just not in that church, bro. Well, doesn't God keep a remnant to himself?
First of all, there's the assumption that you're so spiritual and you're so spiritually discerning that you would know whether or not the spirit was in that church. I mean, let's just dive into let's just start pulling at that thread for a little bit here. Hey, bruh. It's like the guy that I heard one time say, I was pastoring this church and this guy's sitting there going, and he goes, "Hey man, this church is dead." And I'm like, "Well, what gives you the right to say that? You don't know that." Yeah.
Yeah, this
Anyway,
is a
go
guy
ahead.
that.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, this is a guy that showed up one time and
Yeah, he
sat
showed
with
up
your
for a
people.
weekend, and we let
Yeah,
him preach a Sunday morning service. And look, in different parts of the country, preaching's different, and the way people respond to preaching is different. And
sure.
because this church didn't respond to him the way that he thought they should, well, that must mean they're dead. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, or maybe you're just not that good of a preacher.
Oh, don't hurt his feelings. Don't hurt his feelings. But it's so true.
We play
But it's so
because we
true.
love.
That's
Yes.
right. And I think with the way we've consumerized church, that if it's not what we want, then it's got to be wrong. Heaven forbid that we just go and hear preaching that's from the Bible, and that be enough. Um, anyways,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't
Way
want
to
to
go,
beat
Gavin.
the.
You got us riled up.
I don't want to beat the
Some good
singing thing.
answers.
I don't want to beat the singing up, but I do think that it's the high production has definitely kind of put us in some predicaments
But
when it shouldn't.
but here's the problem, okay? Because this is something that we're dealing with is that we don't want to buy into the attractional model, right?
Mm,
Where everything that we do is done for the purpose of attraction, and where that is the be all end all is the number of people that you can draw in. We don't want to be that. But you can go too far to the other end of the extreme. And I think that we ought to care whether or not what we give to God on Sundays is a part of our Sunday morning worship, whether or not what we're giving to him is our very best.
yeah,
Because I think he's due that. And
yeah.
so that doesn't mean like, and I'll just use myself as an example. Miles, you'll get this, but like, we know there are some weeks where, man, the sermon has just come together, and man, we're ready to just throw down. I mean, man, we're thinking about it on Saturday, and we can't wait to preach it on Sunday. And then there are other weeks where you're just like, man, I didn't have as much time to put into it this week. I had other things going on. Maybe I had a couple of funerals to do. My time was limited, right? I mean, we all accept that things that there are going to be certain variables week to week. But whatever the week looked like, you ought to be able to come on Sunday morning with the very best that you have to offer. That you didn't, you weren't sloppy. It wasn't just, well, this is second rate and I know it and I can do something about it, but nah, it'll be fine, bro. It'll be okay. I mean, you know what I mean? There's a line there in there somewhere. Um, and so yeah, I just throwing that out there.
No, I think you're right. I think you're because if we were all in, I don't know, anything else, I guess. Like we don't just show up to a thing and not give it everything we have, right? That's what we tell everybody with athletes and all these things. Show up and do your best. Well, I think church should be something that we all show up and do our best for, not just the preacher, not just the singer. Yeah, I know the songs are crazy.
I'm going to do that every time I hear it, man.
I know I can't. I've been having to mute my mic, but it's just
What are they?
when I start.
What are they working on?
Yeah,
I'm
what
working
are
on
they working on?
My wife is working on my flooring, and
Your wife is sawing?
yes, Gavin, we are equal opportunity employers here at
You
the Harris
you
household.
you trust her to do that kind of work?
Well, she hadn't cut her hand off yet, so if you hear like a, I gotta go. And so, um, but
Okay, anyway.
but I think that we really just, I don't know how to say this. I think that we try to do good by um, just telling everybody they can come as they are, right? That is a good thing, and you come to church with who you are and how you are, but also at some point you should also come as the best you can be. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not saying like the
Well,
best version of yourself, but if you're willing to change your appearance to not even just your appearance, if you're just going to put everything together to go meet with the one you want to marry and you love and all those things, if you're willing to put in the effort there, why wouldn't you want to put that same kind of effort in to meet with the king? You know what I mean? I know that
sure.
maybe I'm thinking wrong there,
I
but
agree.
I
Thank
think
you,
at some
Gavin.
point, yes, that's right, Gavin. Way to
Good
throw
for
it in
you,
there.
bro. Good for you.
But I I know you have to be careful there because then you can go to the fundamentalist side, right? Where if you don't have a flat top haircut and you're not wearing a suit and tie, and that's not at all what I mean. What I mean is just giving your best for God because He gave you His best. And I think just giving him your best just kind of shows that sense of awe and reverence. You know what I mean? I just think that's something that we're missing. And so like my son hates it when I tell him to wear a different shirt. That one's dirty. He's a teenager, but it's like it's like, bruh, you know, and I catch myself because I try not to be so hard, but like God has blessed us with this house. God has blessed us with these means to have these things that I didn't have growing up, and not even that I didn't have it, but God has blessed us in this time and we do have it. So let's just give him back what he gave us and that kind of thing. So I think that's important.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I agree.
It's good.
Well, we kind of went off topic, Gavin, but it's such a good
I
question.
realized you guys do that a lot. I watched the podcast and about 10 minutes in, 10 minutes into the question.
Hey, Judgy,
Nah,
come on now.
I'm just kidding. I'm
That's
just
right.
playing.
He's like, hold on, I'm going to the notes.
I gotta go to the notes. I gotta go to the notes, dude.
We should make every guest do this because it just builds anticipation. Hold on, I
So
gotta
you're
go to
telling
the
me every other
notes.
guest just has them stored in their in
Yeah,
their
there's
brain?
this thing called a pen and paper.
Why? When I can do it on my
Nah,
phone.
Uh, we should just get a guest that me and you can roast for like an hour.
that'd be
No, hey,
fun.
not that you would do that, Chris, because you're a
Right.
conduit of grace.
Indeed.
Indeed. So what was it was the birth narrative. That's what Todd preached today.
Yeah. Matthew 1:18-25.
Nice.
I think I'm going to do the story of Herod killing all the babies on Christmas Eve.
Good one. You know what?
Actually, I'm not kidding. I think that is what I'm going to do.
You know what screams Christmas to me? King
Well,
Herod.
the way I look at it, in the hands of a lesser preacher, it might be a problem, but
That's fair.
you know.
That's fair. And back to you, Gavin.
You
Oh,
ready?
hey, Gavin.
All right, hold on. I'm gonna read it. It's
Aw.
kind of long. It's a paragraph question. 2 questions. All right, let's see. How do you feel about street preaching? Like the people standing on corners, calling out people's sin in public. Should we not be spreading the gospel with love?
Is that the whole question? It wasn't really a
Yeah, basically
paragraph,
just
was it?
like
I mean, mean,
It
Well, on
looked
the
like a
note,
paragraph when I wrote it
I was
down.
about to say on the notes app, it looks like a paragraph.
I got you.
Hold
Well,
on.
Miles,
Let
That'd
you've
be
me,
a
actually
question.
participated in street preaching before, so I'm going to let you take this one.
as the saw is going in the background. All right, it stopped. I honestly, I
Hey, I'm texting your wife right now.
just be like, hey,
Hey,
we're in the
cut
middle
that
of a
out. We're
pod.
trying to podcast here.
It's getting louder. There's no telling what she's doing
She's
back there.
she's moving closer to you.
Yeah, she's like, it's time to wrap it up. You're supposed to be helping me lay flooring. So, I, I, sometimes I know what we're talking about. We're talking like the Ray Comfort type thing, where they're confronting sin, or even like the abolitionist rising type stuff. Um, um, I think it's necessary. I think it's okay. I think it's something that should be done. I think that one of the things that it bothers me is they have a camera out there, and I know why how they can reason it by saying we're trying to show people, hey, this is how you can do evangelism, and this is how we are spreading the word about protecting the unborn, as far as some of them go.
But do you not think,
Um,
like, say he was just a non-believer, just like walking through public and you hear
sure.
these people like calling out people's sins, or they're at a festival or something. Do you not think that pushes like some people away in a sense?
I mean, if they walk into the church and I'm preaching against homosexuality, or if I'm preaching against adultery or lying or stealing or cheating, and they're an unbeliever, is it not going to cause the same thing?
Yeah.
So so while I understand what you're saying, if I'm being combative, of course that's probably not good, right? But there is a sense that the world needs to hear that Jesus is the only way, and without him we will perish. Now, I understand that there are two ways to skin a cat, right? There are the people who walk the streets and don't do street preaching like what you're talking about with a megaphone and saying sin and all this stuff, but they're meeting with people, walking with them, talking to them about Christ. And that's probably more beneficial because you're being kind and courteous. But also, there are just sometimes you need to confront sin for sin, and be open and um allowed. I guess loud. I don't know. I don't know if that's the right word. Um, but I think there's a place for both. I do get what you mean. But I think it's all in the intent of the one that's doing it. Like, I think there are street preachers that are just trying to share the gospel and in a good way, and still have combative issues and problems, right? I think for me, where I start drawing the line is if I'm doing this for clickbait, and if I'm doing this for a following, then that's a problem. So I don't know. But Chris is much more different than me, so he may look at it different than I do. So
I don't really have an opinion on it.
no way
I,
you're gonna take
I
that.
really don't.
No
I really
way.
don't have an opinion. I mean, I kind of agree with Miles that, a lot of it goes to the motive. But the problem is if you're walking by, you don't know what their motive is. God
Yeah.
does. And
Yeah.
so, maybe we just say what Paul says about those who preach Christ from impure motives. But then he says, but who cares as long as Christ is being preached? He
Yeah.
says, I don't care what their motive is.
Yeah.
That's not quite what he says, but it's along the same lines. And so maybe that ought to be our response here, that if
Sure.
Christ is being preached, then, and then I think it's in Jude where, there's a comment that's made that, like, there's some sin that has to be confronted in a very public way. And there's
Mhm.
other, no, that's not quite how that goes, is it? I can't remember. Just forget I said that. So, yeah.
Oh, edit that out, Miles. No, I'm
Right. Yeah.
leaving that.
Yeah. It's at, something or other. Yeah. So
Yeah. But I think what Gavin's asking is because here recently, this has become quite the issue, even in Oklahoma. I would say it's actually very big. There's a special group that goes out on the University of Norman's campus a
University of
lot.
Norman, where's that?
Or sorry, University of Oklahoma. I don't know why we got to be that way, and hurt my
Because
feelings like that.
precision matters. and
Does it?
clarity matters in
Oh,
podcasting and in preaching.
that's right. And we are all about candid,
Down there at that
clear.
University of Norman.
So, anyways,
Sorry.
but I see this. It's a lot lately, and it has been a lot. Um, but I find it, very interesting. I feel like we don't all we tend to see is the bad that they show, like people arguing with them, because no one's gonna watch them have a great conversation. Like, you know what I mean? Like very rarely do they show a clip of where they actually had good conversations with people. You know,
Right.
more of the time it's all like "Brr," and everybody's yelling at each other, and just down there at the University of Norman, and so that's kind of the issue that I see. So it goes back to motive, of course, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry,
That's
Gavin. That
good.
one it didn't interest Chris in his kind of way. So
That's okay.
yeah.
All right, back to the notes. Does my camera go off when I do this?
Yes,
Yeah, it
that's why
does,
we
buddy.
laughed
It
at
sure
you.
does. Between
Hey, what
your
if
camera going off and,
the saw
Abs
back
back
there?
there with the plane saw, you know.
uh, all right, here's a kind of a curveball, I guess,
All right.
question. Should we as Christians support modern day Israel?
So we were supposed to have another guest on tonight, right? And because of scheduling and everything, I know Miles had to kind of call you last minute and see if you could come on. What's crazy is that the guy that's coming on next week was going to ask that question, that exact same question. Yeah.
Like it's a big question right now.
No, it is. And you know, should we support Israel? Well, what do we mean by support Israel? I mean, do we mean by that Israel is the supporting Israel in 2025 is the same thing as supporting Israel when King David was on the throne? I mean, do we mean that? In the sense that Israel, was really only God's covenant people and so forth, and so everything that they do, we have to stand behind, and everything that they do, we have to sign off on and agree with, and they're not capable of doing anything wrong. Well, I don't know that I would agree with that. I mean, if you know the history of Israel becoming a modern nation in 1948, I think it was, they intentionally said they were not going to be a religious state, that they were going to be a secular state. And the reason was because they were just coming out of the Holocaust and they didn't want that to ever happen again. And they felt like it was their emphasis on their religion specifically that weakened them, that made the Holocaust possible. And so when they formed this new nation, they were going to be a secular nation, and they were never going to, and they were going to have strong military and strong, they were going to be strong in defense, and they were going to never allow something like that to happen to them ever again. And so the nation of Israel, they legalized gay marriage long before we did in the United States. They, if you just take an honest look at where they are, at least in terms of a state, they're certainly glad to take money from evangelicals, but they're not really like-minded with us. Um, and so the reason that this is even a question is because of the idea of the last days, that the church is going to be raptured out, and so then the nation of Israel is going to have this mass revival, and they're all going to come back to God, and they're all going to come back to Jesus ultimately, and that may happen. I'm certainly not an expert on eschatology. I know what the scripture says, and I think Paul says in Romans 10 that God's not finished with the Jews. And so that has to mean something. But does that mean that everything that my dispensational friends believe is 100% accurate? Well, not necessarily. And so, I don't know. The question again was, should we support Israel? And, I mean, I guess my answer would be yes. Like, I mean, I think there's some things that we should support them, and some ways that we should support them, some things we should support them in, and other ways that we shouldn't. I mean, if you're just asking a political question, I mean, and if we just leave scripture out of it for a minute, just deal with it from a political perspective and a geopolitical perspective. Well, I mean, they're one of the few countries in that part of the world that's friendly with the United States, and so certainly from a geopolitical perspective, you can understand why we would be extremely supportive of Israel. But that really wasn't your question, I don't think, Gavin, was it? I think you were thinking more from a religious perspective, more of a spiritual and scriptural perspective. And so I think, when they're right, I think that we need to be able to say that they're right and defend them. But when they're wrong, we need to be able to say, look, this does not fit with who they should be. And we don't agree with them here. What do you think, Miles?
I mean, I think you're right. I think, you know, Paul does say in Romans 10 that God still has a use and a purpose for the Jews. First of all, he has to keep his covenant with Abraham, right? The promise and those things, and through the line there. So, of course, but I mean, I think it's back to what you say is the same Israel now, the same Israel as we see and read in Scripture. The answer is no, right? I mean, it's no. They don't even. In fact, most of people in Israel don't even really believe God exists, and it's more atheist than theistic really at all anymore. More that God is more of a fable in their things to scare kids to act right and those types of things. And so, no, I would just be answering the same way. Geopolitical, you'd have to say yes, because they're a ally and those types of things. But I mean, God can do whatever he wants to. I mean, that's who he is, a sovereign nature. And if he's going to bring the Jews back to himself in eschatology study, then he does, and that's God. And so we just support what God would have us do. But I think God gives us the spirit, conscience, and all those things to make decisions on when we support someone.
Yeah,
That
that's
makes
right.
sense.
I agree with that. Yeah, totally. um,
Sorry.
there's a figure in world history, and he's actually mentioned in the Bible, and he's the only non-Jew in the Bible that God calls a Messiah. Do you know who that is?
He
It was a
muted.
man called. It was a man named Cyrus the Great, and Cyrus the Great was an Assyrian. I think he was an Assyrian. And anyway, and God used him to judge the nation of, I can't remember if it was Judah or if it was the nation of Israel. I believe it. I believe it was Judah, but I could have had that wrong. But the point being that there was a man that God had raised up to judge Israel that God calls a Messiah. He says he is my anointed servant. That's interesting. And then another thing is, you read in Galatians where Paul says, who are the true children of Abraham? The true
Mm.
children of Abraham are those who come to faith in Christ, which would be the church. And so, things get difficult really, really quickly when you think about that issue. And like a lot of other things, it's not nearly as cut and dried as people from this camp or people from that camp want to think that it is. Most of the time when the church argues, the reason, and because you see the same thing with Calvinism and non-Calvinism, or Augustinianism and Pelagianism, the reason that we argue about those things is because the church has always argued about them. And the reason that the church has always argued about them is because scripture seems to affirm both things. And so what do you do? So, yeah,
Good answers.
well, that's what we do, Gavin.
That's right, Joe Rogan.
That's right.
Another one?
Back to the notes.
Back to the notes, baby. All
That's
right, this is
crazy.
perfect. This is perfect. Chris mentioned Calvinism, so let's see.
Oh,
Mm.
Miles'
If we
two
are
favorite subjects.
I wrote this just specifically for Miles too.
Ah,
Oh,
what do
good.
we do? What
I
do we
hate
do?
Christmas.
All right.
Uh,
If we are predestined as Christians, what
oh
is the point in
goodness.
spreading the gospel?
Okay, well, here's the answer because God commanded us to.
That's right. That's right. Matthew 28, right?
And that's
18
the
through
answer.
20, Acts
And
chapter 1.
and Gavin, that's a good question, and it's a common it's a common argument against predestination. But assuming that predestination is correct, um, even if it is correct, God still commanded it. And so it's not our job to question him. It's not our job to question his commands. It's not our job to rationalize them. It's our job to obey them. And so if we are predestined, if people are predestined to salvation, why spread the gospel? Because God tells us to.
Good
Um,
question. All right, let me follow up with another one.
okay. I was just
If
going to
all
say
the
this.
Go
Hold
ahead.
on. Let me just
Go
say
ahead.
this
Go
because
ahead.
this is one of the things that we remember. Paul says in Romans 10, how can they know if they do not hear? How can they preach if they are not sent? And so the same thing is God has commanded us to go and share the gospel. And so how can they know if no one says anything? Well, then that's kind of the point, right? Is that it's us going and being the vehicle that God uses to bring people to himself. So that's the importance of us going and sharing the gospel because we don't know when God is going to call you. We can't know, right? And so we have to be people who share the gospel and always be about it. So continue on. Sorry.
Nice. You're good. I could say so. Say it is correct. We're predestined, or people are predestined to heaven. So that would make people predestined to hell. And God is all loving. How does the all loving God predestine someone for hell?
Well, so I would reject your premise that God predestines people to hell just on the basis of Romans chapter 1, 18 through 32, where Paul lays this out and he says that, everyone has sufficient evidence to believe and nobody is condemned for what they don't know, but they are condemned for what they do with what they know, and that at the most basic level, God has given man a conscience and that he has put him in a world that operates on a certain set of rules, that fall always comes before winter and winter always comes before spring and spring always comes before summer, which always comes before or fall. The sun always rises in the east. It always sets in the west. After the rain comes, the crops grow. If there is no rain, the crops don't grow. And in other words, that man was supposed to and is supposed to look at the world around him and see that there is a creator. Even if he doesn't know the cross, even if he doesn't know the gospel per se, he can see that there's a creator and that he can see certain things about this creator. He can see that this creator is strong. He can see that this creator is all powerful. And so his response to what he knows, there's a creator and the creator's powerful. His response to that ought to be a response of worship and a response of gratitude. But that's not what man does, according to Paul. What man does is say, hey, I see all this stuff. I hear the thunder. I see the lightning. I see the rain falling from the sky. I'm going to go worship that tree over there, or I'm going to go worship that rock, or I'm going to worship the sun or the moon, or whatever the case may be, or I'm going to worship money, to put it in modern terms, or science, or whatever the case may be. The point just being that God doesn't send anybody to hell. Rather, we ought to think of it in terms of people either want to be with God or they don't. So they either want to be with God or they reject him. And what Paul says is that God says that what Paul says is that God gave them up, he gave them up, he gave them over, right? So in essence, what God says is fine. You don't want to live with me. You don't want to live according to what I say. You don't want to have intimacy and fellowship with me, then fine, then you won't. and so God gave them up. He gave them up, he gave them over. And so, ultimately hell is the ultimate expression of that. Why do you think you'd want to live with God in eternity if you don't want to live with him here on earth?
Mm.
If you don't want to walk intimately with God, in your 70 years or your 60 years or whatever you have, why do you think you'd want to live in his presence for eternity? And
But
so and so
essentially,
God
God,
so
God,
God doesn't send anybody to hell.
but God knows if you're going to hell or not.
Well, but even if you don't accept predestination, you still probably accept that God knows who's going to accept him and who's not, which is a full and really, while we're on that topic, I mean that's just some slick kind of, you know, smooth talk, but it really comes down to the same thing. I mean, if God could look at eternity past and say, okay, Fred over here is going to choose me, but Sally's not going to choose me, unless you're willing to say that that God could be wrong, which okay. But if you're willing to say, hey, I see down in the future, Fred's going to accept me, and there's no possible way that Fred won't accept me, that is still a form of predestination or
Mhm.
fatalism or whatever word you want to attach to it. It's still a form of that. The only difference is that the Calvinist says God gets the glory and God gets the credit and God is sovereign, and the non-Calvinist says, well, I don't know what they say. They just leave it up to fate or whatever. So and really, you have the same thing with the free will talk, because people say, well, what about free will? Well, what about free will? Right? I mean, Jonathan Edwards says that we always choose what our nature tells us is good. So, and this is the illustration that I would use with college students, and all the people in Alva have heard it, or I'm sorry, in a certain town in Northwest Oklahoma have heard it. But like for the next 100 meals, you can choose one of two meals. You can choose meal A, which is steak or fish or chicken or whatever meat you like, with a baked potato and a big old piece of chocolate cake. That's meal A. And meal B is, horse feces covered in flies. And for the next 100 meals, that's what you have to choose from. 100 out of 100 times, what are you going to pick? You're going to pick the steak and the chicken, or the steak or the chicken or whatever, and the chocolate cake. You're never going to pick the horse excrement with the flies. Why? Because because you can't eat it, because it's not possible for you to choose it. Of course not. You can eat that. I mean, you can physically eat it. But why won't you? 100 times out of 100, because your nature tells you this is good and this is bad. And so, yes, we can talk about free will as long as we accept the fact that our nature will always dictate to us the choices we make. And so, if you have a sin nature, then what are you always going to choose to do? You're always going to choose to sin. And so, I mean, in my mind, the predestination thing is pretty settled, and we do evangelism because God commands us to, and God doesn't predestine anybody to hell. Now, how can I hold both of those? I mean, I can understand why people would think that there's a contradiction there, but it's not my job to solve the problem. It's my job to be faithful to what the text says, and that's what I believe the text says. Sorry, you kind of stepped
No,
on one of my
he
spaces there,
was
Gavin.
he was just probing for the question that he's heard me say back when. So yeah,
What was the question?
does God predestine people to go to hell?
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that some people don't realize this, but not all Baptists believe or hold to Calvinism, and um, like my brother who lived in Kentucky, of course. The Southern Seminary is in Kentucky, and so everybody's a Calvinist except for Stephen Furtick. But that's a story for a different time.
That's a whole different
Uh,
deal.
yes, yes. And so when he came to Oklahoma and he asked me questions, I'm like, no, in fact, you're almost an outcast here if you even talk about Calvinism. And so, very interesting thing
Yeah.
here in the Midwest. So. And
Good.
even the seminary I went to is like, "Oh, you're from Oklahoma, aren't you?" When I started asking questions
Well, whatever do you
about
mean?
Well, for me, I was asking about schisms. Why is this such a still huge schism? And he's like, well, and he kind of looked at me kind of weird, and then he said, I bet you're either from Arkansas or Oklahoma, aren't you? And I said,
Well,
interesting that he
actually,
would.
right on the border. We
That's
lived in
right.
Oklahoma and we ate chicken in Arkansas.
That's right. That's right. So
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, Gavin, you got one more? Or you tanked out,
Let me
man.
see the notes.
Back to the notes.
See if I got another one.
Chris, you need to start sharing. You're sharing your screens and start doing like John Madden and drawing and stuff.
Hey guys, we got to wrap this up. I got family stuff. Sorry. I hate to be that guy, but I'm going to be that guy one night.
All right. Well,
That's
Gavin.
Good. I was out of questions anyway. It's perfect.
Oh, good.
Nice,
well, then that worked out well.
Nice. Well, good.
Well,
so,
everybody, it's been a real fun time, and everybody have a real Merry Christmas. And Miles, we love you, and Gavin, appreciate you coming on, brother. And okay,
No problem.
That's right. All right. Thanks, guys.